That's the biggest thing I run into is no one in the C-suite knows how to make a decision. They don't even know when they're making a decision.
Welcome to the Debugged Agenda. I'm your host, Jason Short from CH2 Solutions. My goal is to demystify what happens behind the boardroom doors by sitting down with CTOs, CEOs, founders, and investors to explore the decisions that help shape technology organizations. From leadership to talent, innovation, growth, and acquisition. I hope you enjoy this content. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Many technology leaders are facing the same question. What happens when anyone in the organization can build software? AI and vibe coding tools are making it possible for employees with little to no development experience to create applications in a matter of hours. For some organizations, that's incredibly exciting. It creates the opportunity for innovation, experimentation, and rapid problem solving. For other organizations, it's terrifying. How do you protect the company data? How do you maintain quality and security? And perhaps most importantly, how do you govern something that people are already doing? But according to today's guest, this isn't really a technology problem. It's a trust problem. In this episode of the Debugged Agenda, I sit down with Keating to explore how leaders can embrace innovation without losing control, how organizations build trust in times of rapid change, and why some of the most important technology decisions have very little to do with technology at all. If you're a technology leader trying to balance innovation, security, and organizational change, this conversation is for you. Welcome to the Debugged Agenda. Today, I'm joined by Keating, a technology executive, 4-time founder, board-certified, advisor to high-growth SaaS companies with CEOs and CTOs, and recently published author. Kathy has spent more than 30 years helping leaders cut through the noise, align on what truly matters, and build resilient teams that move companies forward. Kathy, it's great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
So tell our listeners a little bit about what you've been doing today or, within the last month.
Oh, well, everything is all AI right now, isn't it?
It is. It is, yeah.
So I have been working with a large enterprise company working on service design because we talk in AI as AI becomes more and more prevalent that the real moat is how you service your employees or how you service your customers, right? So service will be the real moat because if you're a great service, people will use your product. If you're not, they'll go use the competitor, right? And so really interestingly enough, this company came to me wanting to do service design to improve how their service is delivered within their business to their customers. And I fully AI enabled that thing. I had built a skill for service design. I had a bunch of stakeholder conversations, and Claude helped as my advisor and partner to build an incredible service design that they're taking and running with and building. It was pretty cool to have AI as my partner and push on all the different aspects of AI to see how can we really bring it in and help it transform a business. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, the steps that we're taking with AI right now are absolutely amazing. What I find interesting is that some companies are they're diving head first, right? From the CTO or the CEO down, right? They're mandating it. Hey, everyone in this company is going to use AI on a daily basis. And then you have other companies that are kind of dipping their toe in a little bit. They're really not sure on how to roll that out to their company. I imagine with this situation, there were some conversations on, hey, from an executive perspective, hey, how are we going to roll this thing out so it doesn't just get out of control?
AI really needs to have written words to interact with it, right? So with Agile, we've had human to human. You could just have a verbal conversation, translate the requirements, and then the human would interpret them and go build, right? But with AI, it's different. It's human to computer, right? And for many, many years in Agile, we've discounted the writing things down, right? And so what's really interesting transformation I'm starting to see in business is how powerful the writing it down fast, obviously with AI. What should it do? The better your design, the better the outcome with AI. the C-suite hasn't come along with that. They haven't really understood that that is now an incredibly important aspect, the design of the work. Yes, I have a written design, and yes, I can plug it into the computer and go build it now. But at the end of the day, the executives still want outcomes. It doesn't matter how fast the writing or if the writing happens in between, they want their outcomes. But what we really need is the C-suite to really validate and recognize that that is now a first order, very important part of the process is how well the design goes into the computers, how well the code coming out of it is going to be. So yeah, we're seeing this really interesting shift where the C-suite is really not there yet. They're not valuing that piece. But that piece is so incredibly important. We see it all the time. Systems thinking, systems design, so important for feeding good quality ideas into the AI so that it can, produce more quality output. Because we're producing a lot of bad quality code really fast now.
Right.
So how do you then, so are you really efficient or not, right? Yes, you're coding faster, but if you're not valuing what you're putting in, you're going to get out the bad stuff.
Yeah. So it's funny. I just finished up a podcast, and I had just done a 4-part series on LinkedIn posting on how AI is bringing back TDD, right? Test-driven development, and you got to validate it. You got to know what to validate before you send the AI engine off to go code it, right?
Yeah.
Hey, writing this stuff down helps flush it out and forces people and executives to think about where do we want this to go and what do we want it to interact with. I think before, maybe even 5 years ago, we were still taking requirements and putting them into design, clickable comps, things like Sketch, so that people could interact with that to help flush out some of those ideas.
Yeah.
Are you seeing some of that? Are you seeing some of the design aspects replacing the ability to document or put it in words, as you say?
Yeah, you can use those design assets to communicate. I did a lot of that on this. I checked diagrams and sketches from the client, pulled in a lot of their existing documentation to help form how this should go. And I'd say Claude is really good at diagnosing what it says and making inferences from it. OpenAI, not so great in my world. It's also great at producing diagrams and designs from written word. So that was fascinating to have it produce something that I could pop right into Figma and tweak for 5 minutes to make some minor adjustments. And then it was fully fleshed out. To have a flow diagram in 5 minutes that would have taken me 5 hours to probably build, a game changer.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how tools like Figma and designers that work in that space take the next step into the development phase, right? Because they're taking their design, they're working with AI, and they're implementing the front end. They're like, listen, I'm just going to do it better because they're the original designer, right?
As long as you have the design system, there's no reason why the developers shouldn't be able to generate the design themselves within the constructs of the design system, the coding standards and all of that build whatever they want. Then what are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with way worse technical debt than you've ever had before, right? So the role of the systems designer to build the design system is incredibly more important, right? Because now the building of the UI is democratized.
100%, right? 100%. As we pioneer this space, I see things on both sides of the development lifecycle, right? And what's interesting to me is on the product side, the usability and the client UAT, right? User acceptance testing is just because I can roll out 15 features in a sprint. Should we roll out 15 features in a sprint, right? My end customer can only consume so many new features at any given point in time, right? Are you seeing that conflict with now what we can do with versus what the customer can consume?
Oh yeah, the customer doesn't want to consume change constantly, right? We saw this back in the late 80s where companies started adopting tech for things basic like accounting, right?
Right.
Bookkeepers
Right.
used to keep them in books. And so companies, got a lot smaller. I was at a company in the late 80s that was over 500K employees and went down to about 100K because technology just allowed the business to be more productive. And so the business needed less people to do more. But what's beautiful about that time is all those people found other jobs because the technology enabled more companies to arise, right? But we're still very far away from that. Most companies don't have great APIs, they can't be integrated to. We're still rudimentary about how we work within the ecosystem, and AI really needs the ecosystem to be fresh and alive and really modern, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Now you do a lot of CEO, CTO coaching, executive communication, and one of the comments that I found interesting that you had put in was, I focus on alignment first by ensuring the CEO, CTO, and cross-functional leaders are making decisions from the same vantage point, and then I coach teams to operate with intention rather than reactivity. Are you finding that with this influx of people wanting to use AI and the executives trying to keep the ship pointed in the direction, that they feel necessary, that there's more reactivity than there is setting a clear intention on, hey, here's how we're going to roll this out. This is what we're going to do with this.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for trust to get broken right now. And as leaders, when trust gets broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild.
Yeah.
I'm going to use an example. So I had a coaching client, CTO, whose engineering team, there was an internal project, that data visibility project that the CEO wanted. And the engineering team said, well, that'll take about 3 months, right? And
Right.
an internal project, why would we do it, right? And so the engineering had been pushing back. And so the CEO just vibe coded it over the weekend. And
That's dangerous.
100% worked.
Wow.
Now, what do you think happened Monday morning? Well, you told me it's going to take 3 months. I vibe coded it in about 8 hours and it works. It's exactly what I need. Where'd trust go? Right? So my first comment to my coaching client was like, well, trust just got broken. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And it really opened his eyes to see he needed to interact with his world a different way, right? So the truth is, your CEO, your CFO, your CRO, they're going to be vibe coding. That's just how the world is now. Coding is now democratized. The creation of ideas is now democratized. So how is product and engineering going to adapt to that new world? And what is the role of product and engineering in this new world? It's to protect that whatever vibe coded actually can push to production, that the ideas are sound, that they're fleshed out really well. And so how can we bring more systems thinking, better communication to this interaction where coding is now democratized or idea generation is now democratized? It's not isolated only on product and engineering. And so, I think it's really important for us to be talking about these things. Like engineering should be talking about security and reliability and scalability, coding standards, why we do what we do, modularity. So that puts us on the same side of the table. Yeah, go vibe code whatever you want, but here's the 5 skills you have to install in your Claude so that you're coding within the structure that I need you to structure so that we can actually get it out the door. Product managers need to have product definition skills in Claude, right? I'm going to talk in Claude a lot because I use Claude a lot. But you have to embed those so that every person in the company can now have a framework through which they generate ideas and vet ideas, right? And so frameworks and systems and way in which we work is incredibly important. And in the past has not been because we had time to adjust.
Right.
Right? That's the thing is there's no more time to absorb and adjust.
Right.
If I had 3 weeks, I could show you my design multiple times over the course of 3 weeks to get your feedback. And so that's a very inefficient way of working, right?
Yeah.
But it allowed us to not have really strict frameworks and systems for how we work, right?
Right.
Now, if I can do that in 3 hours or 3 minutes, the system itself has to codify that framework, right? And so as product owners and engineers, how can we build the systems that allow these people who are vibe coding to do it in a safe, constructive manner? So our role as system thinkers is more important, right?
Yeah, for sure, that last statement, as system thinkers, system architects, because in my experience, based on my CTO roles that I've had, right, my CEO goes to a trade show, gets one of his most excited clients talking to him. He comes back with a shiny red ball idea, right? And this client might not even be their most important client. That one client's like less than 2% of our revenue versus this other client's like 8% of our revenue. Maybe we need to vibe code over the week for this shiny red ball, right? And then it gets into production and never gets used ever again.
But you know what? You only spent like 10 hours on it versus 10 weeks, right?
That's true.
You know, if you can do that in 10 hours, go for it. Like, because proof of concepts and MVPs, like they're meant to be put out into the world, and they'll be either used or they won't be used, right?
Right. And so there's a couple of things you mentioned, right? So I was interviewing another CTO, and it's funny, we talked about trust or the concept of trust for half an hour at the executive level, because that is really what creates and builds the team. So in being able to establish a framework in which other executives can work safely inside of, and then allowing them to, hey, you want to play in my sandbox? Knock yourself out. Just play inside the box.
Yeah,
right?
Play inside the box. And our job is to deliver quickly and protect the company, right?
Right,
While we
security
do
is
it.
a huge issue.
Right,
Yeah.
you know, there's even a lot more subtlety in that. It's not just security; it's scalability, it's performance, it's customer perception. Do they perceive your company as taking care of them as a customer, right?
Right.
And so, like, our job as technologists is speed and protection, shielding, and our job is not coding. Coding is just writing down of the ideas, right? It's actually the lowest value, I think. Engineers will probably get mad at me. The lowest value part of our job. The real part of our job is how we take the idea and turn it into an action plan and problem solve the best solution, right? So that critical thinking, problem solving is the most important skill we have, and wielding it in the leadership meetings, in those executive meetings, so that we can, like I said, get on the same side. I want to be on the same side of the table with you, and I want to be solving a problem together. That's what trust is about, right? And it's so easy to break trust when we're not focusing on speed and protection, right? Speed and shield.
So what are the most common issues that you find when you're being brought in? Is it trust? Is it that they're bringing you in because something in the executive branch isn't working? What do you find the most common issue is when you're brought in to do coaching at that level?
I mean, it really comes down to lack of trust, right? And it surfaces in multiple ways. The product is not moving in the direction it needs to move fast enough. Customers have been impacted, right? Again, that's all speed and trust, speed and shield, right? You're either not moving fast enough or you're not protecting us enough, right? And it's the most common reasons people get fired. It's the most common reason trust gets broken. And, you know, there's some stats out there that say, I think the last stat I saw is like, CTOs get fired the average tenure of a CTO is about 18 months, and trust has been broken for about 9 months before they get fired, right? So, like, you know, you don't do the math. Like, you only have about 9 months to solidify trust in your organization. And what's worse is, like, I get brought in while I'm on my 5th CTO, and it's still not working. Well, okay, there's something more fundamental. You can't tell me all 5 of your last CTOs have been incompetent. Like, well, that tells me like either you're not hiring real CTOs or something else is at play here fundamentally in how the leadership team operates. And how can we diagnose what's really going on about how you're not communicating effectively? And that to me is the most important thing that I come in and fix is like dysfunction at the executive level. There's no clear operating system. There's no clear goals for the organization. The goals change constantly. There's no accountability. A lot of CEOs I come in and they're like, well, you're an expert in X. You should just know how to do your job. And they don't hold the person accountable and they don't tell them when they're going in the wrong direction. And so, yes, eventually trust will get broken. But like, what did you do to maintain and cultivate trust along the way? And then so that operating system about how the executive team operates is what'll either kill trust or grow trust, right? So
Right. And so are you coaching when you, like I have been the CTO, the fourth CTO in 4 years that comes in, right? And they're just like, oh yeah, the other guy didn't know what he's doing. I was like, how many CTOs have you had? Oh, the last 4, and 4 years? I'm like, oh boy, okay. So I go right into, okay, this is a communication situation, right? And there might be some issue with some engineering. However, you can't roll through, and it happens. You know, they bring in a CTO and over and over again, and so the communication. There's a massive gap between what the board thinks technology leadership is and what it actually takes to build scalable, high velocity, engineering organizations.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the board, the CEO, they just want outcomes. It's all about revenue. It's all about growth, right? And at the end of the day, as technology leaders, we need to speak that language, right? And technologists, we're good at communicating downwards to our team because it's our happy space, right? We were a technologist. We know how to speak technology. So therefore, we are very comfortable communicating downwards to our team. And the thing I see 100% of the time when there's an issue is the CTO is not talking the language of business upwards and outwards. You can't come into the board and say, we have this great technology architecture and it's going to, Kubernetes and this and that. And right, you have to say, here's how it delivers on your revenue growth. Here's how it delivers on reducing or raising the gross margin, right? So that you're operating more efficiently, right? Here's how it affects EBITDA. Like we have to speak that language of business and do the translation between the technology to the business and ensure we're delivering on speed to market, right? Do it efficiently and protect the company in the meantime. We have to speak that language as a CTO. And if you don't, your trust is going to be broken.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? So one of the reasons that I love this podcast is because really it's for executive members, maybe new CTOs, maybe senior architects or dev managers that want to move up into that VP development position or the VP of engineering wanting to move up into the CTO role. What would be a recommendation for those new levels wanting to move up into the CTO role or executive role to learn how to speak the business side of the organization, right? Because to your point, they've spent probably 25 years in tech, right? On the tech side of the organization, right? That was where their bread and butter was. And now they have to go interact with someone in finance or HR, right? Do you do that? You must run into that in your coaching.
Oh, all the time. Yeah. So I think the thing I think that's important is when you get to like senior engineer and above, you should always be talking about why we're doing what we're doing and what it means for the business. Right. So we want to practice that skill, senior engineer and above. How does what I'm doing further the goals of the business? Why am I doing it? What does it mean to my customers? And the problem is, as technology leaders, we skip that part. Like we're in those meetings as CTOs and VPs, but then when we communicate it downwards to our teams, we're like, go build X. And we're not doing the why and what it means. And so we should be practicing that context from like the moment you're a senior engineer. That's when the work shifts from taking direction to like critical thinking.
Giving direction, right.
Giving direction, right? And when you're giving direction, you have to give context. But I think we need to take more ownership as senior engineer and above of our job is to communicate effectively within the context of where the business is going. And so the more we practice it at senior engineer and then staff engineer, by the time we get to architect or director or even engineering manager, you should be really versed and expert in the skill of communicating that context. Then serves you as you go to VP and CTO to be able to have those executive communication conversations in the context of the business. So.
Yeah, I think about the parable, right, of the 3 bricklayers, right? And the first brick, what are you doing? He's like, I'm laying bricks, right? The second guy is like, oh, I'm building a building. Mm-hmm. And the third guy is, oh, we're building a place for the homeless to come and have shelter and right?
Yeah.
And so that concept of like the bigger picture and being able to communicate that kind of said down the line makes all the difference in the world, right?
Yeah. It's not about the brick, it's about the building and who's going to be living in that building going forward is so meaningful. Yeah. So we just need to build more of that skill. Well, where do we teach it?
Right.
Where do we teach it? Like, let's go back all the way to college, right? In college, we teach computer and software engineers to code, to logically break down the problem into code. Like, do we actually teach them like problem solving? We teach the skill, right? And then they get into the job as a junior engineer and they're told what to do, right? They spend the first 5 to 7 years of their career being told what to do. And so now they've built a habit. Well, you're supposed to tell me what to do and then I'll go do it. And up to that point, they've built a habit. Then they get promoted to senior engineer. And now they need to be generating the ideas, but no one's ever taught them how to do that. And so where are we teaching people to be problem solvers? Well, now that coding is democratized, we're talking about like junior engineers are being cannibalized, right? The junior, because that's AI is like a junior engineer, right? You tell it what to do, right?
That's right.
So fewer and fewer junior engineers are getting jobs. And so what does college need to retrain is the problem solving aspect, right? Because now you're coming in and you're no longer writing the code, you're a problem solver. Mm-hmm. You're a designer, you're an ideator, right? Like, so how can we teach that? But if you go all the back to college, is still not there. Right? So how do we teach problem solving? I don't know. We're going to have to crack that nut because AI is exponentially growing, smarter and smarter at what it does. I don't know if you use Claude, but in like just the last 2 months of Claude have totally changed how I work because of the surge in capability with these latest models. And I think I saw a stat the other day that it's like, don't quote me on this, but I think it is like every 3 months, the capabilities of the AI models are 3 to 5xing. So if you look at that acceleration curve, like where are we going to be even in a year?
CH2 Solutions is proud to sponsor the Debugged Agenda podcast. Everyone's talking about AI. The harder question is, what should your team actually do? At CH2 Solutions, we help technology leaders cut through the noise. As former tech executives, we provide strategic guidance and experienced software engineers to help companies build the right things and build them faster. Learn more at ch2solutions.com.
I talk about this with a lot of executives is the gap between the senior engineer and the junior engineer right now is going to be massive in 6 months. But it's the same when I'm talking with executives, with teams on the executive team, companies that commit to AI now versus those that are still dipping their toe in. In 6 months, the growth of those companies, it snowballs, right? It's going to be exponentially because the one that starts today is going to be 6, 9, 12 months because it's just going to continue to be linear in its upward growth and expansion versus those companies that are kind of slowly moving into it. Would you agree?
Yeah. It's going to be, the gap is going to widen and widen. A lot of companies, their business is going to dry up overnight. We're talking big enterprises. I really worry about them because it's really not come into the day to day. I mean, I talked to one company the other day where their engineers were only allowed to spend $10 of credits a month.
A month?
A month. Yeah, so they'd use it in one day, right? And so I'm just like, what?
Right.
Like, just you've left all the productivity gains on the bench, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, like, those companies are going to be eclipsed. It's going to be pretty rocky, right?
Oh, for sure.
People are gonna lose their jobs. I think about the .com bust in 2001. A lot of people lost their job. They all had to retool themselves to do other jobs.
Vocations.
Vocations, right? And so, like, it's gonna be rough. You know, my book Liquid is about boiling, right? Boiling reactivity, right?
Yeah.
Versus frozen, right? You're frozen in your adoption. Like, I can't adopt one other thing because most of the business is boiling, right?
Right.
And the only way to adopt this effectively is to be clear-headed, in flow, proactive planning. What do I do next? What do I do next, right? And so I think that there's fundamental shift that the executive teams of most companies have to make to get through this effectively. And what's worse is media is not doing any help. Have you looked at X lately? It's like, all Claude, just plug this into Claude and it can like change the world. And it's like, no, it can't.
You still have to guide it.
You need a clear system, And I think like a lot of people in the C-suite are going to have to make a major shift in how they think about how their business runs, right?
I agree.
C-suite needs to be system thinkers. And I don't know, this was a TechStars FounderCon talk I did a few years ago. And I had 100 CEOs in the room. I was talking about tech to CEOs.
Yeah.
And I said, how many of you are systems thinkers? And in a room of 100, 2 of them raised their hands. That's the biggest thing I run into is no one in the C-suite knows how to make a decision. They don't even know when they're making a decision, right?
Can you elaborate on that? What does that mean?
Yeah, so like you'll be in a leadership meeting and you'll be talking about a problem, but everyone walks out of that meeting with a different impression of what was agreed to, right? And that's where teams, C-suites are not making clear decisions. That meeting should end with, what are we deciding to do? How are we capturing that? Who's doing what? Who owns it going forward, right? That discipline is not present in a lot of C-suites.
Can you give me an example without sharing too much?
How do we want to approach white labeling? So sales guy comes in and he goes, hey, I've had a lot of inbounds from big insurance companies. They want to white label our product. What will that take? And the technology person voices in, and then the service person says, well, how are we going to service it? Right. And a lot of dialogue happens, but then what happens at the end of the call?
Right.
Like, we should look into this more.
Right.
Right. But no one is assigned as an owner. It's all cross-functional, like, especially when it's cross-functional challenge for the business.
God. And that's such a great example, right? White labeling a product, right? So let's just dive into that because I love the nitty gritty sometimes, right? So that touches, let's talk about the departments that touches, right? It touches, like you said, customer support, right? Because you can't answer the phone anymore and be like, hey, our company, how can we help you? No, you got to know who's calling in to say, oh, white label insurance company, how can we help you, right? No one say, okay, I as the CTO, I'm going to lead this or champion this, or I as the VP of marketing, I'm going to champion this, or I as the CRO, the chief sales revenue officer, I'm going to own this because I'm passionate about doubling my revenue.
Yeah, like, who's going to own it? I mean, last time I did a white label, I as the CTO figured out the pricing model with the CRO. Right? Like, why am I doing that? Right? I'm not even finance. And so it's just really fascinating. And then the CEO's like, you guys all make it happen. right? I'm working with the board. That CEO it starts at the top. Like that project is not going to be effective. It's not going to launch if that CEO isn't holding all those teams accountable to the mission and deeply involved in making this sale happen, right?
Right.
So
Right.
like there's just a lot of like it's fascinating. Like you get to that C-suite. My husband laughs at me all the time when I say this. Most people are really not good at what they do. And I mean that for me, for you, for every single person, right? So you put all these people into a C-suite who are really good at leading their teams, but not really great at communicating and don't have a first team mentality and don't have an operating system about how they work. Like they're great at leading their teams in silos, but coming together, most of us are really not great at that. Right? And unless the CEO says this is how we operate as a team, that CEO needs to have a strong systems lens on how he brings those or she brings those silos together and orchestrates them, right? And so I think that the speed of AI is making that CEO's job even more and more important. That they take a systems lens to what they do, right?
So I'm sure this is covered in your book. Can you give me an idea, when you think of systems thinking, give me the high-level executive.
Like how does it look in the C-suite?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to talk physics here a little, right? Each part of the system has a goal it's needing to achieve and a boundary of how you need to operate with that system. So engineering has a boundary. You give it ideas. It produces code, right, in production. So that's a good example of engineering as a system. Well, product is a system, and sales and finance, we're all systems. So think of like big bubbles, right? You put things into those systems, they put things out of it, right? But it's the gaps between those bubbles that are most important to orchestrate. How does finance work with engineering? How does engineering work with sales? And so there's a bigger bubble around all these bubbles that has to orchestrate the subsystems, right? And so it can get really complex because, like, you think about engineering is a bubble. Each team in engineering is a bubble. Each person is a bubble, right? So you have to think about the boundaries and the interactions between all these things, right? So at the C-suite, what's important is to be able to orchestrate change across all those subsystems, right?
Right.
And we know that with complex adaptive systems in physics, if you make a change, it has a ripple effect through all the system, and that fundamentally changes the next thing you need to do. So you have to think 2, 3, 4 orders of change and how you're going to influence change in a complex system. You can't just make change in a complex system. You have to influence change over time, right? So in a business, you have to be able to say, we're going to do this, and then that's going to cause this to happen, and that's going to cause this to happen, and so we'll have to do this next, right? That ability to think 4, 5, 6 layers of change and how each of those are going to influence change over time. And of course, change requires us to change our habits of how we work. And so therefore, habit building, we know, takes a lot of time. So that's why people say, I told them 10 times to do something and we're still not operating effectively. I hear that all the time from a CEO. I told them 10 times. Well, you can't just tell someone to change. You have to influence the change.
Right.
Right? And so that's systems thinking. You know, how do you orchestrate across all those silos and think 2, 3, 4 orders of change later? It's not easy.
The ability to influence as a leadership technique versus the told or because I told you so, right?
Yes.
Is significant. And so that is one of the areas that we start working on right away, which is like, hey, listen, you're a systems architect. You need to stop using power in your position to get people to do things,
right,
and enroll them in the activity of that. And so if anybody is like a senior engineer, if there's something out there, that they could grab onto from this episode, right, is build trust in the people around you and learn how to motivate through influence versus power.
Yeah.
And because what it sounds like you deal with that even at the executive level, that they still don't understand the difference between motivation through power versus motivation through influence.
Well, I mean, we want simple solutions to complex problems. That's human nature, right? And so power is, if I just force you to do something, you'll do it, right?
Right.
It's much harder to actually solve the complex problem. Those companies are typically much less effective when power is wielded at the top, because you can't force someone to do something. You have to help them build the habit of change into the organization. Like, you have to habitualize it, right? You have to influence that change to take hold. And so you're right. Like, if something isn't working, find another way to work it.
Right.
And find another way and find another way. And sometimes we have to do 3, 4, 5 things before we finally get that outcome that we desire out of it. And that's complex thinking. That's systems thinking.
Are there techniques that you teach for teaching the method of influence?
I start with like transparency. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Where are we at? Being really clear. So I like to see a clear business operating system within the C-suite. So whether it's OKRs or EOS or Shape Up, there's so many of these, right? How do you evolve the business? How are you clear about where you're at and what do you need to do next? It starts with that. And then if we want to achieve this next, what are we going to do? Who's doing it? What is our plan? When we did it, were we successful or not? Like, everything we do is a hypothesis. Many experiments fail. We want to stay clear-headed and focused. When we get reactive, we devolve to our worst selves as humans. Can't make you do what I want, so I'm just going to push harder, right?
Right.
No,
right.
You have to stay very clear-headed and you have to work the problem.
That's right.
And so I really try to build that clarity of where we're at and what to do next into leadership teams that I come into.
Well, what do you say to the CEO who says, well, I know where we need to take the company from a financial perspective, but I have to listen to the customers to figure out where we're going to take the products to achieve that, right? And so what do you say to the CEO that claims to just not have all the answers?
Well, then we help create the answers. Like, so you're in a place where you don't have the answers. What do we need to do to get the answers?
Right.
And then let's systematically go get those answers. Right. Whether it's having conversations with customers, whether it's taking that and codifying it and tying it back to the financial goals, and then mapping out a series of experiments we're going to run to achieve those goals, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so some of it is like a discovery phase of
totally.
This feature looks small, less impactful. This feature looks largely impactful, but let's try them both out and see which one gets traction.
Yeah. And, I'm a big fan of like prioritization schemes, like weighted matrix, right? Like, what's important to the business and how do all these slice and dice? What's the experiment that is most likely to succeed? Just thinking a lot about those kind of things and just being super systematic about how you evolve the business.
If you could, for our listeners, provide one practical thing that they could bring either to their small team or their leadership team to improve decision making.
The thing I would suggest to their team, bringing it to their team, is to end every discussion you have with your team about capturing the action items and who's owning what and what cadence when you're going to come back to the progress, right? Building that into the DNA of the organization. Those agendas need to be very repetitive. People need to know what they're accountable for, and then they need to know that you're actually going to question them on their progress the next time you talk, right? So that rhythm is really important. From the individual, Can I add another one there?
Yeah, please.
From the individual, I think one of the best habits I ever built years ago was I do a personal retro every day. What went well today? What didn't go well? What do I need to do differently tomorrow? And I think that really locks us into really good awareness about who we are and where we're going. So
Yeah, I think those skills that you focus on individually, because you're basically demonstrating that, hey, I live my lessons, right? I'm not giving lessons and I'm not living them. When I was a junior developer, I got introduced to the personal software process, which basically it was about estimating code, right? And so it was like, I think that'll take me like a couple of hours, right? However, when you really break it down, nothing's ever going to take you a couple of hours, right? You got to think about it. You got to learn the problem. You got to go find it in the code. You got to fix the problem. You got to test it. And then you got to allocate a certain amount of time just in case you didn't fix it properly the first time.
Yeah, one thing I see all the time engineers do when they're junior to mid-level and even senior engineers, I see it a lot, is they don't retro, did they do what they said they were going to do?
God,
right?
So
if I said it was going to take me 3 days and it took me 5, what am I doing about that?
Right.
I need to change how I'm planning. No, I almost never see that, right? And of course, leadership needs to have accountability to say, how good are you to goal with your estimates? Because the business relies on them. None of this is finger pointing. It's all just about evolving and being better at what we do as humans.
It allowed me to really sharpen the sword of my ability to estimate software, which people are like, you're so good at this. How'd you get good at this? I was like, I don't know, 20 years of hammering on my own ability to estimate my own software.
Yeah, but you took personal accountability to, I'm going to do this skill really well. So that's what my leadership, my personal retro every day was really about, right?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love the personal retro because at least engineers are so used to the retrospectives that this isn't foreign for them, right? This is a very familiar concept to them, but something that they can apply internally, right? You got to kind of look at the man in the mirror and be accountable to yourself, right? Before you start holding other people accountable.
Yeah.
And what a great simple technique to use on a daily basis. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to take at least 2 minutes to talk about your book, Liquid.
Sure.
Right? How CEOs, CTOs unlock momentum. Tell me, give me the summary. Yeah, I was so excited to read it.
So a few years ago, I partnered with Etienne de Bruin and Scott Graves to bring to life the CTO levels. So if anyone's run across CTO levels, it's a pretty comprehensive framework for doing the job of a CTO at different levels of size of organization. So it's it really focuses on, we've talked about speed and shield here a lot, but also stretch, which is you growing as a leader, and sales articulating ideas effectively. What's your size of company? How do you need to operate as a CTO? So we know an early stage CTO is very different. They're often very hands-on in coding. An enterprise level CTO is, all about budgets and influence and customers, right? Acquisitions and things. So the role is very different. So when you asked the question earlier, what kind of CTO do you want to be? The CTO levels really codifies that. And so we had built the framework, we teach the framework, we coach with it. And so Liquid came to be because every time we started talking, we said, the job of the CTO really is how do you influence the C-suite? How do you work more effectively with the board? And there was, at the time, not a lot of books on systems thinking since the Donella Meadows book, which came out many years ago. And so we decided to write a systems thinking book that really focuses on those 4, we think are the emerging properties of a highly functioning organization, which is speed, stretch, shield, and sales, through a storyline. So there's a narrative of a company that goes throughout the book from early stage idea all the way to enterprise. And where they get off kilter and how they bring themselves back is told through the narrative of the book. And we use boiling and freezing to help you recognize when your business is off kilter, and then how do you bring it back to flow, which is liquid. That's where the title came from.
So I'm excited to read it. I can't wait.
Thank you.
So before we do conclude, I have a section called Rapid Fire.
Sure.
And I'm just going to ask some basic questions. You can just give me kind of your answer, the first thing that comes to mind. I do this same questions every podcast so that it builds on one another. And this should be fun.
Cool.
Okay. So what is one tool or system or operating mechanism that you swear by?
Oh, Reclaim.ai transformed my life on my calendars.
Okay.
Managing calendars.
Fantastic. All right. What's the most overrated trend in tech right now?
I would say AI used poorly. I'm just going to quote X. Just download this prompt and your whole world is going to change. Like, I don't know. It's most overrated.
Okay.
Be smart about what you're doing and use it wisely.
Oh, gosh, so true.
Well, or maybe the most underrated or overrated is actually listening to that.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, and believing it. Okay. A leadership belief you've recently changed your mind on.
Okay. That I can change somebody else. I can't change somebody else. All we can do is change ourselves.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, like, somewhere along the line in my leadership, I realized I just have to do what I think is right and set the stage.
Yeah, that's really good advice for people coming up. Okay. What's the best CTO skill that no one puts on their resume?
I'm going to say having a clear technology dashboard about where everything is at with red, yellow, green rankings, communicating effectively in one slide. Let's put it that way.
Oh, that's a good one, right?
Yeah, right?
Right. Okay. Morning ritual. Do you have a morning ritual or do you just grab coffee and get in the meeting?
I do. I grab my coffee. I sit in that chair right there and I write my lists for the day. So I have a whole way in which I plan my life through lists. And then I do capture my little mini retro and plan my day while I drink my coffee. So
that's fantastic. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Okay. What I love about this conversation is that it reminds us that technology leadership isn't just a tooling problem, but really more around lack of clarity and operational alignment. When boards and CEOs understand that, they stop trying to fix engineers and start fixing the flow. For anyone who wants to learn more about your work, where should they go?
Keating.com, Keating.com, or find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, if you're a CTO struggling, I coach CTOs all over the world. That's a core part of my business. So pick up Liquid. It's a good read. That's pretty much it.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited. Well, Kathy, thank you for joining me and giving us a rare look into how leaderships can navigate, restore alignment, and build organization capable of real momentum.
Thanks for having me. This was a great conversation.
I've enjoyed it. I really have. Either way, it'll help us continue this content to demystify what happens behind the boardroom doors. Thanks again for listening to the Debugged Agenda podcast.